Hi, I'm Jan Ozer. I'm speaking today with Pete Scott, who is founder and chief strategy officer at Play Anywhere. We know Pete back from his time with Warner Media and Turner Sports Media back in the day. But we're here to talk today about Play Anywhere's recent announcement with Phoenix for live sports interactivity with the lowest streaming latency in the market. Thanks for joining me, Pete.
Yeah, always good to see you, Jan. You're one of the best ones in the business, so I appreciate the discussion.
Thanks very much. So, I'm not familiar with Play Anywhere,
Hmm.
but from what I could gather was as we talked about a minute ago, you're creating something out of nothing. You're convincing sporting leagues and events to create interactive rights. Then you're
Hmm.
providing the technology side for people to leverage those, and then the
Hmm.
financial engine to kind of pull it all together and make sure everybody gets paid. Is that
Hmm.
roughly accurate?
Yeah, you hit it around the head. When I was at Warner Brothers Discovery Turner Sports back in the day, we would sit down with our great league partners and sort of discuss what you can and cannot do in those broadcast contracts. And I saw a lot of them in my day and work with some great people in getting those deals done. And there was always sort of a gray area around what you could put on top of the content and what you couldn't. And so I sort of took advantage of that sort of ambiguity and basically said, can we figure out how we can establish some new media rights around interactive rights and really trade on that, right? Create a value for both the broadcaster, the league, and create new engagements that, primarily I think the time has come where a couple factors have come in. Jennifer Aniston's sweater is still in a closet somewhere for 30 years, and everybody tried to make that happen. But I think, the consumer now has an expectation through TikTok and TikTok Shop to see video and to integrate with it. You're seeing a massive use of QR codes to basically sync and inject e-commerce into all kinds of videos. So I think it's time where the mind and the muscle in the living room has changed, and people basically have an expectation to interact with content or to get more information. So we've built a platform that really enables both the IP creator, like a league or an unscripted producer, or the social economy, and even the AI video creation platforms to create interactivity inside videos that get created. And, that can be really monetized through e-commerce, personalized ads, wagering, a number of things. So we facilitated that with the Play Anywhere platform to really sort of see that 1 plus 1 could really equal 3 for the folks that are part of that ecosystem that own the screen.
So, describe to me how that all was implemented
Hmm.
for the
Hmm.
Olympics, for example. You
Hmm.
talked about that being one of your high-profile experiences so far.
Yeah, that the IOC and the Olympic Committee have a host of broadcasters. One of those um, is Dentsu in Asia, where Dentsu buys the rights and then they basically sell the rights to over 22 different parties in Asia, very similar to what Eurosports does in Europe. And basically, they presented our solution to the IOC and said, look, we have broadcasters that would be interested in interacting with content, schedule, medal counts, the ability to purchase, uniforms from the teams. And we would like to try and do that. And here's this company that can kind of make that happen. And so we did a lot of rigor with IOC Rights Committee. We created really a guideline, about 100-page guideline of when you can and cannot put interactivity over live video. And we got the sort of stamp of approval. We rolled it out with MediaCore on their OTT platform in Singapore, and we basically integrated our SDK to create these overlays. The buttons would appear on the right-hand side. Fans could go in and click on those buttons. We had a really great partner in UX and design with Ease Live out of Norway, and it was a very seamless experience on the OTT side. Then on the other side of the world, Claro Sports, who's based in Mexico, chose to go the QR code route. So on the QR code route, their stage that was, their studio that was positioned in front of the Eiffel Tower, they would call
Mm.
out a QR code that would go to a second screen experience that we hosted in the native language of Spanish. We did the same thing where we basically allowed fans to integrate on the second screen. So we sort of have two paths where we can provide you with the SDK in your native player or the QR code for traditional broadcasts that want to drive to a second screen experience. And that's what we enabled on behalf of the Olympics. There was some ad inventory in there that was able to be captured. And it was just sort of a crawl, walk, run. And we're having discussions with them now to sort of, open that up for all the different broadcasters and make that an opportunity for the next winter games and the next summer games. And so I really think that the special sauce was the compliance platform with AI and our computer vision and data. We could see what was on the screen so we could adhere to those guidelines. And that was very, very important to the IOC and ensuring that, that was basically the right time and place to put interactivity on the screen.
So what kind of numbers have you released in terms of, how many viewers or how many buyers or
Yeah,
how many?
I can't give you I can't give you the number. Numbers are really good, but the percentages were pretty remarkable. I was surprised anywhere between 30 and 40% of the audience seeing those buttons were interacting. 30, 40% of the
Wow.
audience that was seeing the QR code were interacting. And I think it always comes down to, what's the value exchange for the consumer? We know not everyone's going to do it, but we believe that this is going to be the future, right? Of how people watch television, where they turn the buttons on or turn the buttons off. They have the flexibility of controlling their own broadcast. And I think, with the great things that Amazon do on Thursday night, where they give you multiple streams to choose from, the stuff we used to do back in the day with player follow on golf, you're just going to see more of a control where the user can decide how he or she wants to watch the broadcast. And, we believe that this is going to be valuable for both the leagues and their broadcast partners and showrunners who do unscripted television um, as well.
Okay, so getting back to the broadcast side, what's the
Hmm.
pitch? What's the pitch to sports leagues these days? I mean, what do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think with sports leagues, we put some wordsmithing together on what we think interactive rights are. We've shared that with really everybody around the world in multiple countries, and they all agree that these rights have not been sort of agreed upon with their rights holder or the league themselves. So we sort of bridge that gap. So La Liga was our first partner, strategic. We signed a 5-year agreement with them, and we're individually going to all their different broadcast partners and unlocking these rights. That's basically what we're facilitating. We don't charge any money to set up or to build the SDK or the graphics. We just take a percentage of the revenue through our patented clearinghouse, the revenue that comes in. So we, take in roughly between 15 and 20% of the revenue, and then we pay out, the rest to how it wants to be allocated by the league or the rights holder.
Okay, and we talk about e-commerce. What are the other?
Hmm.
When you talk about interactivity, what other
Hmm.
experiences are
Yeah,
you?
yeah. So we enable basically, with all the AI and computer vision and triggers from the timestamps, we know when a goal is scored. So you can provide, a jersey or someone quickly to, we're integrated with Fanatics, we're integrated with Amazon. We also, for shoppable TV, we're starting to go down that path where as showrunners start to distribute their shows, they too, in our belief, is they have interactive rights as well. So when they distribute the show, to Discovery or NBC, those can now be shared. All that revenue can, be available to be shared. Same thing with, the cable companies, right? With a Comcast, they can't sell steak knives on the Food Network, and the Food Network can't sell steak knives inside of Comcast environment. So we sort of come in, we basically illuminate that this is a opportunity, free to set up, and then we do the back end integration, which it can be difficult, right? With the multiple APIs you have to do for merchandise, for sports books. So we have some live sports books integrations that we're doing with the Vegas Knights and Scripps in Nevada. We have an announcement coming up here in February with a pretty big RSN as well. So I think you're going to just see the facilitation of more and more people having the expectation, if they choose, to interact with the content on the screen.
So you're working with this, on one side it's the producers, and I guess it's just not sports leagues. When you talk about showrunners, are you talking about, primetime shows or,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we're going right now. We've had good discussions with Adam Mall and Big Brother. So we see an opportunity where maybe you get like an IKEA who basically does product placement inside the show. And during the show, there's times where you could buy the pillowcase or you could buy the blanket that's on the bed. And we've done all that facilitation, talking to the back end of IKEA, basically facilitating that purchase on the screen, getting a call out from the talent, either out of commercial break. So those are the types of things we're starting to see. Um, I think what's interesting is you look like an Anthony Bourdain who traveled the world, and he has a really great library of content. We really believe we can take those off the shelf and re-interactivize them, right? So when Anthony Bourdain comes to a restaurant, you get a link of maybe booking that restaurant or
Mm.
booking the hotel or the Airbnb. So I think there's multiple ways where I think organically people do it anyway when they're watching
Mm.
programming and the creative aspect. And if there's easy enough to make that purchase quickly and easily, or just more sort of taking Amazon X-ray to the next level. I think that's where we want to go, and we collect a lot of first-party data on behalf of those exchanges with those interactions. So that becomes, there are other opportunities to append attributions to those users, right? Where now I know more about Pete because he likes the Lakers or he, made a wager on LeBron James, and we are integrated with Ticketmaster. So we have the ability to sort of, provide really static, good interactivity. Where we want to get to, and we're getting there, is how do we create personalized, right? So if I know more about Pete, I know I can send him or LeBron James sort of questions because I know he's favorable to that, or other types of things. And I think for me, there's a vision where you and I maybe have thought about back in the day is it's going to get to the point where it's one-on-one, where the experience will be, I get what I want on the screen, I get the ads that are relevant to me, and that's not that far behind. And we're sort of going in that direction, where we're learning from the user, we're leveraging household IDs and really sort of personalizing the experience.
Are there any new parties in this? I mean, you've got the sports leagues on one
Hmm.
side and the
Hmm.
broadcasters on the other. Or
Yeah, I think the two ones we're really concentrating now on the creator economy because the amount of video that's getting created by them, and really their ability to sort of control how they want to integrate ads into their shows, how they want to link out to merchandise. Those are all things that they want to do, and I don't think they've been empowered to do that. I think what's really interesting is the 12 labs, the Runway MLs of the world, the Pikas that are these new video creation AI platforms. I think it's it's going to happen where more video is going to be created in the next year than has ever been created ever. And I think we're going to fit nicely into those new videos being created to have interactivity, to monetize those new forms of content that gets created. And I think that's one thing we're definitely focusing on to be that application layer for those AI video creation platforms.
is this all on the primary experience? Is this all on the OTT platform, or is there a second screen
Mm-hmm.
experience that's kind of built into this?
Yeah, what's great is we have the flexibility, like we demonstrated at the Olympics, where we have native apps that work across all the platforms, all the CTVs, Roku, iOS, Android, and then conversely, we have QR codes that open a second screen experience that we can do again with AI in 22 different languages. So we're talking to big leagues that want to spread their brand, around the world. Can you now create QR codes on, let's say, an NFL game, and it's being broadcast around the world. Now you have your own companion, right? While you're watching the game that's in your language, it's open for local advertising. And we think this is another opportunity. So again, two paths of creating our SDK to work in multiple native applications, and then really just basic QR code to a second screen to increase, more opportunities for ads and for engagement.
I mean, what about the synchronization side? I mean, that sounds very
Mm-hmm.
challenging. How is that working?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends, right? I think with unscripted television, we know when, the actor walks into the screen. We know roughly when you're going to see that blouse, or when they go to the restaurant, or when they go to that hotel. So those are a little more easily and predictive. I think in live, you have a great, sort of question there, and I think we are able to get again, timestamps that we know from a Genius Sports or a Sports Radar that tells us exactly what's going on in the game. We have the ability through AI and computer vision to know the scene and what's going on. So I think on the sync side, we have a pretty good parameter of how we want to provide that interactive overlay at the designated time. I think what's really super interesting is, the whole thing around micro betting has sort of become very, very popular, for the sports books with our friends at, DraftKings buying, Simple Bet, a great company, other companies that are Curo Sports, others that are doing this sort of very, very open and closed micro betting. And I think, the video solution is coming. Obviously we're going to talk about that, but I see a world where the leagues especially will create maybe a platinum tier, right? That maybe costs a little bit more money. The data syncs with the video. It becomes sort of a prime product that a designated amount of the audience will want to pay to have that premium, low latency, synced data experience.
Okay. What are you seeing on the data protection side? I mean, data security and data privacy has been a huge issue, and you were talking about all the data points you were gathering. Um, how are you navigating that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's always about getting opt-in as much as we can. And when we work with European broadcasters, it's like a must. And
Mm.
so I think for us, I'm very sensitive, but about making that happen as transparent as possible. And we work with some vendors like Consent, which is a great company that sort of is transparency on what we're going to collect from you, how we're going to use it. And then really it just comes down to just working a little harder to make it a relevant experience to the consumer. Let's provide he or she with what they want. Let's make it easy for them to do that. Let's create that value exchange that we're honoring the ability to collect their data, but we're giving them, a value exchange back.
Okay, so looking at the user side, I sit down and watch the Olympics. I turn on my
hmm
TV. What do
hmm
I see? What's different
Yeah,
about what I saw 20 years ago?
yeah. I mean, I think what you're going to see and what we saw this summer is through our SDK. If someone went into in Media Core's OTT application, they would have seen the buttons right there on the right, and they would have opened it up, and they would have seen it. Their ability to basically interact immediately with it. Again, with the broadcast, you would see a traditional QR code appear on the screen, and the ability from that QR code to hit the second screen. And the fun thing about it is, it's a worldwide solution we're using in multiple parts, and we're learning, what works and what doesn't work. I think it's been fascinating to see what Amazon does on, Friday Night Football, where they're using the Amazon graph. If they know I'm a pet owner, I may see a pet-centric ad, and you may see another ad. And we really believe that's where a lot of this is all going to go, where you can create very, personalized contextual experiences for the user on a one-to-one basis. And um, what's nice is companies like Curve, Interactive, and others are sort of teaching people how to sort of interact with content. So the good news is the same numbers that we see, 30, almost 40% engagement around this content, you're just seeing that kind of interest. So I think it's a time, again, like I mentioned with TikTok, where people see video and they see the expectation. And again, I think if you can really work hard to create a value exchange, I think there's something definitely there, and we really believe so, sort of across those four verticals of sports, entertainment through unscripted, creator economy, and now these AI video creation platforms.
Okay. You talked about, I guess you mentioned API and SDK. I mean, how much of the technology burden is on the broadcasters and how much are you shouldering yourself?
Well, I mean, I think for us, you know how it is. Some shops, you give them an SDK and, they can quickly, get it integrated in a day in their test environment. And that's what we've seen most of the time. Sometimes there's shops that would rather crawl, walk, run, and just do a simple QR code because they can sort of do that, through the likes of a tag board or another sort of graphics engine on the screen. So we try to sort of be able to have our solution work on both fronts. I think what we see a lot of the work we're doing is really that integration layer, right? The ability to talk to multiple APIs on the back end, normalize them, and really present a dynamic sort of beautiful interactive experience through partners, like I said, Ease Live, that just makes it easier for us to drop that off at the broadcaster, and they really don't have to do any of that back end authentication with those APIs. Because as you know, APIs can be very different from different vendors, and so we take pride in taking those APIs and normalizing them and creating really engaging experiences.
What's the player requirement like? I mean, can this work on any smart TV, any Roku, or
Yeah, yeah. So we've developed the SDK to work on all the native applications on Roku and LG, and I think what we want to make sure is that it's easy for them to implement and get going quickly. We think the faster we can get up and get the sales guys looking at the inventory to sell. We're seeing a lot of agency interest. I was just at CES. You're seeing sort of how can I go deeper with a customer? How can I drive the impression, but how can I collect some data about that user? So we're seeing a lot of that request that, quite frankly, I just hadn't seen, when I was sort of coming up through the ranks, because I think there's an expectation now of sort of creating that experience.
okay. One word you haven't mentioned is advertising, and that kind of
Hmm.
leads us into a deal you recently announced with Phoenix that I guess allows you to integrate both low latency and server-side ad insertion into your platform. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like we talked before. I think low latency has sort of been a burden for some people to sort of move forward because they can't justify, the added expense. And I think what Phoenix has definitely done is they've had the tech, and I think with their engineering team, Bill and others, of doing server-side ads, it just makes it easier to do that integration. And I think that's a big aspect of why we like their platform so much, and why we're going to work with them on different use cases. Because if you can sync the data with the actual low latency video experience, I think you just get more people engaging. Sports books prove that on a daily basis when they're taking low latency video, and they're seeing that when it's paired with real time data from the books, they just see more engagement, more wagers made. Our friends at Genius have a great product in Bet Vision. They've seen really, really good success by having low latency NFL video in sportsbooks. So, they're proving it. So, how can we help the leagues take it to sort of the larger audiences on OTT and broadcast channels? And how can we make that experience sort of seamless and easy to do? I think once fans get it and it becomes sort of the switch from SD to HD, I think low latency is going to be common, in every single sort of place we get. We just need a couple of these guys to go first. And I think Phoenix's solution sort of removes those barriers. And we're excited to kind of figure out how we can take our interactive overlays, make them more synchronous to what's on the screen and what's happening, and really just drive an engagement product that the fan likes. I mean, that's basically what we want, to do in this partnership.
Isn't it a completely different distribution network though? I mean, the WebRTC requires its own, uh,
Hmm.
its own CDN traffic and its own server traffic. I mean, so you've got
Hmm.
broadcast on one side that's going out through one channel, and now you've got this entirely new low latency channel. How is that going to work? What do you expect your
Well, I mean, I
client
think again
broadcasters?
with our patented clearinghouse, we can motivate the ecosystem to work together. And if we can prove that we're seeing low latency through WebRTC protocol, it sort of has a common in what we're doing right now. We're on WebRTC protocol. It just hasn't moved into sort of a scale, even though it can be scaled. You just have to incentivize the CDNs to sort of go down this path. And I think they will. I think they'll see the value and the audiences go down that path. I mean, again, I'm old enough when we were building HD channels, and we spent a lot of money to build those channels, and no one thought that we would get the premium, but it sort of happened, right? So I use that analogy where, we had to sort of build it before they come, and eventually they came in droves, and the TVs got changed, and it became a normalcy. So I have a lot of faith that I think there's money on the table, in my personal opinion, that if you can provide a low latency synced data experiences, people will pay for it. We're seeing this really interesting use case with multi-views, right? So I applaud our friends at YouTube TV for Sunday Ticket, where they create, multiple multi-views, 10, get based on a given Sunday, and they're becoming very popular where you're going to see, there's a really interesting company called Screens out of Massachusetts that works with MediaKind on Comcast. So Comcast is seeing an interest in creating more multi-views, and they see the audience want that. And I just think that's a really good indication of fans wanting sort of a personalized experience, being able to multitask at one time. And I think low latency is going to drive a lot of that participation.
So was that, as the HDSD analogy you spoke
Mm-hmm.
about a moment ago,
Mm-hmm.
was that,
Mm-hmm.
one channel for low latency and betting and another channel for normal latency and
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's going to be a premium play. You might see a scenario where, NBA League Pass Platinum is no commercials or commercials because now the server side execution and low latency. And I really think they can get a premium for that. I think there's enough of an audience that like the multi-view, that watch the multi-view, like the audience that's currently on sports books. I just think you're going to see an interest there where that's just going to become common. But like you said, you got to convince the ecosystem, right, to so want to participate and see that it sort of lifts all boats, right, in one way or another. And I think that HD comparison, I think, is very similar. And I think eventually, maybe 2 years from now, people are like, why did we ever wait, to get a score? I mean, I remember way back where, I'm an old guy where at Turner, how many people would crowd around on headline news at the 20-minute mark because we put up the scores of games. And I think that was a big reason why, people watch headline news like on a college Saturday or Sunday because they're all gripped to see the score of the game. And who would have thunk where we are today, where we have immediacy and data and we have all these different things. So it'll come. It's just we got to figure out the business incentive. And again, we think with our clearinghouse and partners like Phoenix, we can do those kind of things.
okay. And could you, probably for everybody's benefit, could you be
Hmm.
really clear and precise on what the new announcement with Phoenix delivers?
Hmm.
Just, because there's low latency, there's server side ad, there's all the
Hmm.
technology you're providing. What does the two together provide that you couldn't provide before?
I mean, I think it's a synchronicity of our engineering teams to basically create a compelling engagement for fans through interactivity and low latency so that it combined, it's a unique and valuable experience for the consumer that, in my view, will want to pay extra for it. We'll want that experience. And I think that's the path that we're going.
What about the server side ad insertion? Is that a piece of it, or is that a critical piece
Yeah,
of
I
it,
mean, I
or?
think that's important, right? I mean, I think it's just like what we're doing with interactivity. We've secured these rights with a lot of our partners, and now we got to create the demand. And if, most advertising is where the eyeballs go, and if we create efficiencies where we can do that, and there's no loss of sync and there's no loss of latency, that's a big deal for the advertisers. And they're already paying for those server side ads. I mean, YouTube's, probably the one of the best at that, right? Where you're watching content and they're injecting ads all the time. And I just think that's an expectation. And if we can get advertisers charged and we have the scale and the eyeballs, the server side will just make it that much easier and better for them to integrate and create these experiences.
Okay. In going back to your core business, you
Hmm.
mentioned hockey. Are you doing NHL at this point?
Yeah, so we have great partners in the Scripps network that currently are providing Nighttime Plus, which is in Vegas, and we are working with Circa Sports, integrating interactive wagering opportunities within the game, synced with what the odds are at that particular time, and we're seeing good success. And the good news is we can improve on the call outs from the talent and so things are going well. And I think you're just going to see sort of more of this in control of the user wanting it. And I think you're going to see new revenue and opportunities for engagement that, quite frankly, you haven't seen. And I really feel these AI, companies that are out there creating video from text, it's going to be the same thing. I think there's just going to be a magnitude of video created, and there's going to be opportunities to create advertising inside those experiences as well. A lot of AI companies are moving to New York City to be very, very close to the advertising community. In essence, when you're putting a prompt in Perplexity or ChatGPT, you're basically telling them kind of like a search mechanism what you're looking for. And again, if we can be that application layer with the 12 labs or
Hmm.
others that are in the space, I just think that's going to be a good position for us to be in.
Okay, sounds fascinating. It's been a while since we caught up, and you've done
Yeah,
some
it's been a
amazing
while.
things. Listen,
Yeah.
thanks for taking the time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, great. Good seeing you, Jen. Always great to talk to you.